Unlock the darkest stories and unravel the mysteries with Dark Crime Box. Subscribe now and step inside the world of true crime like never before.
Particularly upbeat for Shanann. Good morning, baby. Are the girls up?
The second to last day of her life starts off uncharacteristically upbeat for Shanann. Good morning, baby. Are the girls up? Watts answers politely. The girls are watching cartoons in bed. Shanann asks her husband if he wants an NFL package for the fall. Here, Watts shows how seriously their moneylessness has affected him, but not only that, his entrepreneurial attitude to sorting it out. He's going to use Troy McCoy's Fire Stick to stream the games. It seems football is on everyone's mind because Jeremy Lindstrom also texts him. The chronology is kind of out of whack here in the timeline. Watts lies to Jeremy saying he can't join him because he has a quote work function quote he can't miss. It's getting easier to lie to everyone now, isn't it? At 11:18, Watts Googles trials and hot springs in the Aspen area. He's not doing that for Shannon's benefit, obviously. Shanann has no interest in hiking. Watts intends to take his girlfriend there and perhaps enjoy a part 2 to the memorable outdoorsy experience they enjoyed in the sand dunes. It goes without saying that in Watts's fantasy world, he'll be able to take Cassinger to Aspen after Shanann and the kids are dead. She won't know that, of course. Or so he imagines. In fact, by this time next weekend, not only will she know, all of Colorado and the United States of America will know exactly what's happened. I got nightmares in my head. I feel my mind feels like a creature and it haunts me so much. I got nightmares in my head. The most authentic voice in true crime. Now, we are at August 11th, 2 days before the murders, and on this day it was a Saturday. Chris Watts actually had sex twice with Nicole Kessinger. First, before they went to the restaurant, and then when they came back. In terms of the timeline that we've already covered, I think it's really interesting that Shanann says to him here, "Do you want the NFL package for the fall?" You can see she's trying to be conciliatory. She's trying to appease what she's trying to get on his good side. And the thing that I think is really interesting with that this is gives one and the impression that Jeremy Lindstrom has spoken to Shanann about him speaking to her, because how else would Shanann know about his interest in the NFL? Well, if Jeremy told her that he was going to this game and that's why he was taking time off. Interestingly, at 0658, Jeremy asked Watts if he would rather go with him to the Broncos game. Watts then lied to him and said, "I'd like to go with you, but since it's related to my job, they will ask questions if I don't go." The other thing that's interesting is Watts says that he went to get a Fire Stick, to a streaming flash drive to save the money instead of streaming the NFL package. Now, you may remember Shanann complaining bitterly about him getting long-term parking at the airport. Well, now she's offering to spend money on an NFL package. But this just really shows how little money they had if they couldn't even afford this package. And look at what they're about to do. They're about to go on a holiday to Aspen. Shannon's just returned from a 6-week trip to North Carolina. They went to Myrtle Beach. And then also Shanann is now in Phoenix, Arizona. The next weekend they're going to Aspen. But they actually can't afford an NFL package. They can't afford to pay for parking. At 9:45, although not found in Watts' phone, Shanann asked him, "Have you talked to Bella about if we have a boy?" Watts said not yet. And he added, "And I think Watts not having this conversation tells you what he thinks about Bella, what he thinks about their long-term prospects in terms of his life, his plans." Watts said that Bella had said when the baby comes out, Bella's going to pretend it's a girl. Shanann indicated that she was laughing and said, "Oh my God, I love her." At 11:18 hours, Watts searched Google for trails and hot springs near Aspen. This is also for Kessinger's benefit. So him actually booking this particular thing would make Shanann feel like, oh, things have totally sorted out between them, but obviously he's going to slightly take Kessinger instead, assuming that he's going to get away with his crimes. 12:30 Watts told Shanann, "Jen, McKenna, and Kylie coming to watch the girls for a few hours while I go to that Rockies game." Shanann asked Watts to ensure that they don't feed Celeste anything she can't eat. She also asked Watts, "Will you lock my office?" Watts replied, "Definitely." 13:49. Watts searched Google for Toyota dealerships nearby. So, it seems like Watts is anticipating losing the Lexus, and so he's already thinking about buying another vehicle. So, there's a lot of changes that are about to take place. The house is about to be discharged. The vehicles are about to be discharged, and Watts is making very big serious plans. But they're actually beyond all of that. I mean, in his calculus, he's about to get an instant divorce. And why is all of this happening? Well, Watts was clearly addicted to Kessinger, and the regular dispatch of naked and semi-naked selfies was keeping Watts on a leash, kept his addiction burning. If you're still not sure what this really was amounting to, well, Saturday night would be their first chance in over a week of being apart to quench their lust for all of these nude selfies to sort of amount to something real, something physical. And so Kissinger spent 45 minutes that Saturday searching online about, of all things, preparing for anal sex as well as browsing other porn sites. And so one can't help also wondering if this night didn't go that well. If they didn't have sex, would what still have been under this sort of hypnosis to do the horrible things that he did? Remember, all of these are moments for him to also change his mind, to take a different path, to abandon his own ideas, which I'm sure even he would admit were extreme. Did he really want to go through with this? Was he really going to do this? So in terms of the timeline, at 9:30 hours in anticipation of her evening with Watts, Kissinger spent 45 minutes searching Google on topics like how to prepare for anal sex and the anal sex guide. This progressed to searches at Pornhub for interracial porn videos and threesomes with double penetration. Wow. This is by no means the only time she sought out pornographic videos via the internet. 16002 Shannon asked what time Watts was leaving for the game. He replied, between 6:30 and 1700 hours. 1634. What's called a local Papa John's pizza store. That was obviously in order to feed the kids. 1759 hours. Shannon asked McKenna, "Hey love, this is Shannon. How are the girls?" McKenna replied, "They are doing great." CC ate 3 slices of pizza. Shannon thanked McKenna for watching the girls and asked if she needed anything. If she did, just ask. In contrast, Watts never checked in with McKenna to see how the girls were doing or whether McKenna needed anything. That also tells you a lot, doesn't it? 1833. Watts searched Google for lazy dog on 120th Avenue. 1900 hours. Watts searched Google for restaurants near 120th Avenue to include Rusty Bucket. 1920 hours. Shannon asked McKenna if the girls went to bed yet. McKenna replied, "They are still awake. They are just watching TV. And they said they don't want to go to bed yet." Channan advised, "I'd put them to bed by 8. Chris showed you what to do. Make sure they go potty before they go to bed and Celeste gets the diaper." McKenna ensured that this would all occur. You can actually imagine that would be to some extent the substance of Shannon's conversations with Watts when she spoke to him directly. You know what to do with the kids. 212 hours. Shannon searched Google for the score of the Rockies game as well as what time Rockies game gets over. You can tell at this point she's actually getting suspicious. 2,200 hours. Watts told Jeremy that he would be home in 20 minutes. I think at this point he's having his second tryst of the night with Nicole Kissinger. 2,204 hours. Having concluded her evening tryst with Watts, Kess just searched the internet on topics like Chris Watts, Shannon Watts, Ronnie Watts, and 2825 Saratoga Trail. So probably looking for signs that the house really is up for sale. Looking for signs of obviously he has told Kissinger about the drama between Shannon and her father about Nutgate. At 22:15, Shannon called Watson, held a 3-minute conversation. Now, part of what has alarmed Shannon was that she got a transaction alert showing quite a large amount that Watt had spent at a restaurant. Now, this is not part of the story. The story was that he went to a Rockies game. Now, he's saying that he went to a restaurant after that. She's about to investigate the menu and see how much it costs. And she's very rightfully concerned that this isn't actually true. That he is actually cheating on her. And of course, he is. And this whole transaction really is like sort of pulls the cards that are being constructed where Shannon has felt like, oh, everything is great. This little bit of evidence basically is like a huge red flag. And it is. And what you going to do with this information? McKenna Lindstrom's observation while babysitting the kids and what Bella said to her when she couldn't sleep are another extremely critical area of the timeline. I think the fact that Bella can't sleep is also telling you something is going on in that poor child's subconscious as well. I've actually dealt with this aspect exhaustively in the book, so I won't be repeating any of that here. Anyway, after dinner, Watt stops at a gas station to draw money to pay McKenna. Then, exhilarated and happy but disappointed the evening had ended so prematurely. I mean, he just spent really how many hours with Kissinger? 3-4 hours. He headed home. Once home, Shannon would briefly interrogate him on where he was and why he spent so much money. Now that again is also going to give him an idea. You know, if everything is just left the way they are, he's going to get interrogated like this over and over again. He doesn't have the freedom of or the space to have this affair, and it's a critical phase now because Shannon is truly alerted. Meanwhile, Kissinger too would have been disappointed not to have him spend the night as he had so often in July. But he would have reassured her that despite Shannon being out of town and despite him not staying with her that night, significant changes were afoot on the home front. Also that they would be spending the weekend together in Aspen. Ironically, there were ominous changes brewing. They just weren't as mature or as well thought out as Watch's making out they were. Maybe Kessinger suspected as much to come home and then snap want to sell their houses just like that. When would Shanana have had the time to do that? Especially when her last post was a recap of her entire day. In terms of her online searches that night when he dropped her off at home fairly early on Saturday night, then left her alone to go to his home. It's difficult to imagine Kessinger's interest at this stage of the game wasn't strategic in any way. Her search for Ronnie what suggests that what's led on something about Nutgate and his parents and Kessinger wanting to snoop to see if she could see anything else that what wasn't saying. So, you can see how the pressure is escalating. People are getting suspicious. The search for the house might have been to verify if he or she had put it on the market after all. And guess what? He hadn't. In fact, a year later, arguably, it's still not on the market. There was also another opportunity for Kessinger to view Shannon's Facebook profile. And even if she had spent a handful of minutes, it wouldn't have been difficult to establish that she was pregnant. Did Kessinger know? Well, Shannon mentioned her pregnancy in her second to last post. Now, on the one hand, the sheer volume of Thrive nonsense was sufficient to muddy a cursory glance. On the other hand, which mistress would give her rival just a cursory glance online? So here we have it. It's a critical moment in the phone data review. 2219 Shannon searched Google and the internet for Lazy Dog menu. Lazy Dog restaurant and bar find a location. She's actually literally checking up on Watts. She's investigating him. How she came to learn so quickly of Watts's dinner expense is not reflected in the phone. But I suspect an alert from their bank or credit company. That's according to the review and that is correct. 28 hours. Watts called Shannon and held a three-nut conversation. Immediately afterwards, she sent Watts a message. Oh, save your receipt so we can write it off. Her saying that is also a critical red flag for him. Dude, she is on to you. We can also see by the end of Saturday, Shan's upbeat optimism was worn completely through. She was back to being suspicious, except now she was more than suspicious. Now she was no longer giving him the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't be surprised if she discussed this with Nicole and Cassie and they said, make him, make sure that he shows you the receipt. Basically, get evidence, get an explanation. When she called Watch late on Saturday night and instructed him to save his receipt. He knew the temporary tide of happiness he'd initiated in her was turning against him. Saturday night was another fleeting, intoxicating roller coaster ride with his mistress, and he wanted to keep punching that ticket. He was beyond caring about his wife or the children who was sleeping soundly for the last time in their beds. Well, if you enjoy the video, please show your support in the comment. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the series coming tomorrow. See you guys next time.